my friends. This is the Fat Man GM and Twilight 2000 Reloaded. This is in response to a series of videos that Edward Bloodsworth and Rob Gusterson and I have been working on this particular game system. This is first edition Twilight 2000. They have created characters to play in a play-by-mail or post, as I'm calling it, PBP, play-by-post, using email, messenger, whatever is convenient for the various people to participate in. And so there's some stuff we want to talk about. As the GM, I'm having issues in some aspects. One of the things I ran across early on was the ability to, when I first started creating the games, it's the way my thing's set up, and I actually improved on it. My wife helped me this yesterday. Mounted a clamp, permanently mounted a clamp to the end of this thing, but obviously the location placement leaves something to be desired, and there's still some issues with it. But we're working through it, and we'll make it better. That is our goal. It'd be nice if I could just have it hanging from the ceiling. Actually might be doable. I'll have to try that next time. Just hang it straight down. I got some stuff up here I can clamp it to. Maybe it'll work. I don't know. We shall find out. But as a GM, having things to deal with, creating our game environment, and a big part of that is filling it with good guys, bad guys, the non-player characters, right? And first edition rules. Now, Rob Gusterson has done, and I know Edward already knows, they both have second edition stuff, and I have yet to read any of the second edition stuff. I don't own it. At some point I'm going to try and get my hands on either a PDF copy, or I'd likely get the box set if I could get my hands on it, but I'm not going to spend a retarded amount of money for it. PDF will have to work if nothing else. My lighting is less than desirable. I'm sorry about that. But the one of the initial problems I run into is the only setup here for creating characters of any type is for the player characters, and it's obviously military oriented. I mean, their skills, while limited, are geared towards mostly military, with a few odds and ends in the background, such as farming and things like that, because a big chunk of our recruits to the military come from these kind of backgrounds, right? But when it comes to being the game master, and you want to create the NPCs, the people that these people are going to run into around the world, there's no set of mechanics in first edition to allow for civilians, non-military types, and there's also nothing in there for creating the opposing forces, the outpour NPCs. So if I need to have Russian soldiers or Polish soldiers, I'm going to use the same format that you use to create the player characters, which to me is a flaw. It's a something that perhaps in hindsight they tried to address in second edition, because it sounds like, according to Rob, that's part of what's going on in second edition, that they have things for civilians and things like that, and that makes perfectly good sense in a the scenarios have gone south. The world's gone to hell in a handbasket. Yet there's plenty of Western Europeans and Americans running around in Europe that were not in the military. Although the war had been in play for a better part of 4 years at this point, most of them smart got out. But not all. If you look at the backstory for the war itself, not all the world was at war at the same time at that point. So the possibility that foreign exchange students were still running around, businessmen were still going to Europe to do business, and so on and so forth, is still viable. And then they get caught in the middle of it. This very real world scenario happens in every major war. It happened. I read stories and seen movies about this in World War I and World War II, about people who got stuck behind the enemy lines, who were just innocent citizens, were not soldiers, and they suffered for it in one form or another. Some had more luck than others, but that's just the way things work. Then creating it from a game master perspective is much harder. Another aspect that I run into, and this is one of those things that kind of annoys me now that when I was reading the material, when I started reading the material, it didn't bother me at that point, because I wasn't having to deal with these people. But if you look at these sections on the NPCs that they create, You got a great bio on them. You got their age. They got, in this case, we got one person who says she has experience in woodcraft. Her recon 60, and Raffler comes growing up. So we know she's got one or two bits and pieces, and I know her motivations. I got a few notes on her, but that's it. There's no stats, no skill sets, no experience, nothing listed to go for. So if this individual actually gets into a firefight or a physical confrontation with player characters, or as an ally of them during a confrontation, I have nothing to work with. So I'm going to have to scratch up every bit of this, and it has to be reasonable. So other than a few, they make, oh, well, you got your combat rifleman at 80. Well, what more do you need? Well, you might need more if this is a major NPC for this particular module, and not having more information on her is kind of bad, and it makes for a little bit more complicated back work for the player, or for the quote referee in this, as they call it, the game master, because the information's not available, and that's part of the problem as far as I'm concerned when it comes to this particular game system. Now, it sounds like they've addressed some of that. Right? They've addressed some of that in the second edition, which at some point I hope to get. And I'm not adverse to of upgrading at that point. But another person who has actually joined my channel and has sent me some messenger exchanges is self-proclaimed a member of the writing staff for the game system, and I'm assuming the name he's using on Facebook is a pseudonym, so I'm not going to point and wave fingers, because I've not seen that particular name show up on any of the material that I own. But I haven't gone out looking for it. But he seems pretty knowledgeable. My question, of course, or his question was, well, why are you even using first edition? Why are you not using second edition? Well, part of the experiment here is to take an existing OSR, an old school game system, as it is, and play it. Like I said, I bought these things brand new. I mean, Edward says, "Gee, you must have these must be, recreations or what have you, because they're such good shape." No, this is the original first edition, first publication, off the shelf material that I bought, but because it sat on my shelves fairly well protected for for decades, just means that they weathered well, and I'm very lucky that they did, because I've got a few books that didn't weather well. Bookworm, which is an actual critter, got into one or two of them and tunneled its way through a set of them. But the books are still functional; they're just got little holes in them. And then I had some weather damage and some moisture damage, because for a number of years I was living out of my parents' basement, and it was a very moisture-rich environment, not necessarily good on books. And most of these books were down there too, but for whatever reason, some weathered better than others. It's hard for me to know, but as I said, from the game master's perspective, I've had to come across this thing in the way, right? I've had to come across and come up with a lot of this stuff from scratch, and or from the hip, and it's not to be a problem at the moment, because I'm not dumping a whole slew of things right away. We just initiated the beginning of the play-by-post. I'm waiting to get responses back from the guys. I hope to have I set it for a 3-day turnaround for everybody, and ideally if everybody turned around in the same day, and I have the moment I can move on to the next round and get it back to them that same very day. You could possibly run 3 or 4 rounds through a play-by-post daily if everybody's got the time and are on board with moving along at that pace. But we move at the slowest player to a point. The cutoff is 3 days. So if I haven't heard responses from 2 out of 3 of the players by the end of tomorrow, round 2 comes out and their character's still debilitating. They're still in their starting position, wondering what's going on. That's one of the reasons I peppered the group with some NPCs, so I have some ability to keep the story in motion, and we'll see how this thing progresses. And I will acknowledge it has been 3-4 years since this will be the first time I've run any kind of game in over 4 years, and I'm looking forward to it to some degree, and I'm also hesitant to some degree because I don't want to fall short. It's one thing to talk a big talk. It's another thing to actually produce, and it can produce well. And that's one of the second reason I chose to go with the play-by-post, because like I've said in previous videos, my situation, this is a real RV, people. I could turn this camera outside and you can see the street is 10 feet away, and my company building is just literally 15 feet in the other direction. The truck I drive sits in the garage over here, and we are looking for a home, but the housing market is bad, especially for stuff that meets our needs within our budget. And we will find one, but we've only been at it 3.5 months. So, which sounds like a lot of time, but it's not necessarily a lot of time. And I'm limited to play, these mobile hotspots, which this one here costs, was it $40 for 5 gig or something like that. And this one here is $100 for 22. So, I milk this one because it's got the better speeds, and I use it to upload my videos and stuff like that, but I try to stretch it as much as I can. And then this one here is for when I got days off and I'm just killing time. So I'm averaging a lot of money, 100, $200 a month, and I would be doing $50-$60 a month if I had a home line set up where I could do this stuff at home, and we could have for half the price of what this costs. The wife and I will have cable and my internet hookup once we get a house. But that's part of the deal. So another problem I ran into, which is not so much a design flaw, it's just a placement flaw as far as I'm concerned. I need to create vehicles. Now, they have a vehicle sheet, and I couldn't find it for a long time, so I created my own. And then I ran into it by dumb luck while I was looking for something else, and it was like an after attachment at the very end of the PDF I have. I don't have the actual physical one in the box set because that was one of the things that disappeared. It's like the all the stuff that goes with playing the game itself. You need to have, as Rob and them discovered when they were trying to roll up their characters, if you don't have, so here's the worksheet for the characters, if you don't have this set of stuff, these player charts, these referee charts, these were loose page or maybe cardstock in the box set. They're not contained in the books themselves. As you can see, here's the play manual, and it's, very thin. It's very thin. I don't know, 24 pages. So that's about 12 pages of material. And then this one here, referee's manual, is a little bit thicker, 32 pages. So a lot of it was in these additional appendixes, and without these things, you find yourself struggling to put together your character. Well, it's the same problem we have with creating vehicles. One of the issues that I come up with when I'm doing them is that they're spread around. So, for example, here's a chart that talks about combat movement. So in this case, an LAV 25 can move 60 kilometers. I'm making the assumption that 60 kilometers an hour or on a road / 30 kilometers an hour on the surface. And I'm making the assumption because it doesn't say. It doesn't tell me that that's what it does. The only reason I know it says combat movement up here, I'm making the assumption that's what that means. And I have yet to find everything that I need. And then we talk about vehicle hit location chart, and then it talks about various things in here, including suspension, which first letter S is suspension. So if obviously suspension's an important thing, whether it's tracked or not, and if your vehicle gets hit in the wheels or the tracks, it's not going to, likely to keep moving, and it will require extensive repairs, if that's even plausible in the current scenario. Potential for needing to abandon a vehicle outright is very real. But one of the issues I ran into, and I maybe not being able to find it right away, was that by breaking this stuff up, sending these things apart from each other is, there we go. Okay. We talk about the hit locations in here, and then the hit locations over here are different. And nowhere in here in the definitions does it refer to the suspension. And it's implied. Oh, and then if you go to make even more fun out of this stuff, we go and we look at the stats for the vehicles themselves, which we have very limited. Here's the basic information on the vehicles themselves, but it gives you some movement, and this stuff does not jive with the stuff that's listed over here. There's some variations on it. This one at least tells me what the armament is, but when you look at the abbreviated section up here for the vehicles, it doesn't list that sort of stuff, so you had to kind of guess. You're kind of bouncing around, jumping around like I'm doing right now. I'm just flipping back and forth, trying to figure out, here we go. Here's the vehicle damage location list as opposed to the other one. So I got 3 different charts to work from, and they're not all the same. So nowhere in here does it say suspension. There is no S listed anywhere. So I made the assumption FD, TD, RD. I'm not, turrets. Those are turrets. Right, left, center, towards, but no. There's a bit of confusion going on here. It's not well positioned. It's not as well defined as it ought to be, and I kind of find that a bit annoying. And then I got the vehicle guide here, and the vehicle guide here is the same problem. We got some basic information, which is the same kind of stuff you'd find in here, but you don't have a control chart that lists all that information, pertinent information, in one spot. You got some great stuff on color schemes and descriptions. You got some artwork, and I'm not faulting the designers by any means, the writers by any means. I'm just saying that perhaps, just perhaps, it could have been done better. But that's because I have loads of experience not toot my own horn, but I've got loads of experience with this sort of stuff because I was a tabletop wargamer for years, and still would be if I had a group of like-minded individuals. And I've played and I've created my own. I spent a decade, Rob will tell you, I spent 10 years working on my own game system, and a big portion of that game system deals with combat vehicles, and having all your information in one location for those individual vehicles is important, and then having perhaps an overview section at the beginning or the end of the vehicle subsection showing what all the acronyms mean, and having them to be exactly the same is also important. So and the LAV has an example. In one set of rules on the movement, it talks about this amount of movement, and in a different chart it shows the same amount of movement on a road, but the off-road's off by 5. So which one's is it 30 or is it 25? Depending on which one you look at, it can be a bit of a challenge, a little bit frustrating to some degree, not crippling so, but a little bit. And going back to the character stuff, the same problem is having. Well, I have lists of enemy equipment, enemy weapons, and things like that, but I don't have any pre-made bad guys. There's no pre-made generated stats included. There's no monster manual, if you will, because they never thought the need for it. They all they would have had to done at the back of each module was have 1 or 2 pages with couple key individuals flushed out, and that would expedite things, right? It will slow down gameplay if the GM is not. This is a game system that requires the GM to be prepared. You need to be prepared and have some basic go-tos, and if you don't, you're going to find yourself stumbling around. If you're doing it at the table, you're going to find yourself stumbling around trying to play catch-up, and even worse so, you'll be scratching your head and grumbling as you're flipping back and forth through this and this and this and all this to try to get that one answer that you may or may not need. And then the argument goes from some people where they say, "Oh well, no, I wouldn't do that. Not going to slow down the gameplay by that. We're just going to ad lib and keep right on going, and it's all about the story." You know what? Yeah, okay, great for your story. And at the end of the day, yeah, the story might be the part of the game, but it's the way we get there. And if your system is set up to have certain things, you need to be able to access those certain things. That's just my opinion. Now, not crippling, not a crippling issue. And I imagine, like I said, that first edition probably has gone out of their way to address this stuff. And like I said, I will be looking forward to the day when I can actually look at that and compare notes. But I'm purposely refusing to do that at the moment because I don't want to affect my mindset on this particular edition, and we will get through the edition. Once we get the basic stuff out of the way, it's not so bad. So, for example, I made a number of NPCs to flush out the unit, and because there was some confusion, there was a number of people who joined the Reloaded channel. Through Google Plus or whatever, and I wasn't sure if they were playing or they weren't playing. Are they part of the play? I know I've got 3 players, 2 for sure. Although I haven't heard from Edward in a minute, and the other fellow, I'm having problems connecting with him. Rob's definitely got back to me on his first round, and we'll go from there. And the thing I like about play by post is potentially, and taking it to the novel level, if you will, is that you can get by with just one player, and you can create one heck of a story using the material and time. It's just is what it is. So especially if you're the right kind of player. But we're not here for that. My 2 cents on this particular part of my experience as so far as trying to run this thing. And I will continue to put out videos as I feel the need to address them. And like I said, I'm enjoying playing with this little bit of technology here. Although, like I said, some things get to be a little bit out of the annoying. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to the stick itself. We had a fan that you could plug into the dash lighter for my work truck, and it crapped out on me. And I thought, well, you know what, this will make a good replacement for the C-clamps I've been using, and you don't use all the duct tape and stuff. And the wife suggested taking some electric tape and taping it to make it more stable. It still has some movement issues, and it's not as high up as I'd like. And I don't know, like I said, physically speaking, I think potentially I could set it up here like this so it's facing straight down, because one of the problems I have with such a small workspace, this is an RV table, it's maybe 3 feet wide and 2.5 feet across. It's very, very narrow, and ideally I'd have this thing placed over here, but that would mean a foot of space away from the table. I'd either have to clamp a board on there or figure out how to suspend this thing in the middle of the air, which I haven't mastered yet. And I don't want to intend to do that, because at some point the wife and I will get a house, and then we'll have nice little workstations for our hobbies. And we're actually looking to get a couple bedrooms, so we have a spare bedroom just for that purpose, just so we can have storage space and to have set up tables for this kind of thing. But there you have it, my 2 cents on this section of the thing, and I hope you guys have a good day and a better week.